I want to share with you one of the ways that I initially got into retention, and this was about 6 years ago, where I always noticed this one thing happening, and that was after even just 2 or 3 days of retaining, my experience of reality always became slightly more dreamlike. And it's pretty hard to describe, but I'm going to try anyway. Retaining, it seemed to take the edge off slightly. There was more of a cushioned emotional experience, and things could happen, but they felt more chill and slightly more dreamy. And this was actually very pleasant because this state, it nicely contrasted with what I would call the kind of dull soberness of releasing your seed, especially if you're addicted to doing so, or if PMO is in the equation and it's sapping and discoloring your reality. So this act of retaining, it would always bring about a pleasant shift in experience, where feeling ever so slightly sedated was more normal, or feeling a very soft high was also quite normal. And what I used to do was almost save this state for good times and good experiences. So for example, when I knew that I was going to watch a very deep film, I would retain to make it even more emotional. Or if I was out at night walking around and taking in that sweet, sweet night air, I would retain to make it more of a deep experience. I found that there was a correlation between how sort of dreamy or altered it felt and the actual depth of the experience. In other words, when my consciousness had been slightly shifted, reality was subtly more profound. And I can even remember saying in these kind of moments, man, reality, it feels like a dream, it's beautiful. And I would always try and take photos or videos to try and capture it, to try and capture the experience, but it never really worked. And do you know why? Because what I was really trying to capture was not my surroundings or activities. It was my inner state of experience in that moment. And obviously a photo or a video, it can evoke feelings, but it can't capture your inner state. And for me, that's when I began to realize that your inner state of consciousness is all that you really have. And that when it's shifted or altered, this is what allows your experience to become more dreamy or more spiritual or more profound. So feeling this slight shift in my state when retaining, I became more curious about reality and my experience. And I began to see that meditating also had this similar effect of making reality more dreamy. And for me, it came to be this very enjoyable game of shifting my experience and state to have more of a deep and dreamy and often more profound experience of reality. And this is where it gets interesting. What I learned is that if you become invested enough and you take this spiritual work seriously enough, you can find yourself on the path of awakening. Because speaking of things feeling like a dream, spiritual awakening, if you hadn't guessed, is you literally waking up from the dream, which is your life. It's raising your consciousness and deconstructing the dream to understand what life and reality really are at the deepest levels. Now, retention, it's not going to do too much for you in this regard. Although, if you're like me, you may use it as a launchpad to help you feel these subtle shifts and differences in your experience by taking on greater spiritual energy. It could also be easily something like meditation or some other spiritual practice or consciousness raising tool that can get your foot in the door and make you very curious about awakening. Also notice that being drawn to this awakening work or raising your state is no surprise if you really think about it, because we humans, we have this deep desire to shift or to raise our state of consciousness to experience deeper and deeper levels of reality. If you really pay attention, you'll see that we all have this primordial curiosity to know what life is on a very deep level. And it really can be something as simple as retention to give you that first experience of heightened energy or flow state or deep focus that can show you that you can alter what reality is for you. And you can open yourself up to new possibilities, which again can lead you further and further down the spiritual path. Now, going back to retention and its dreamy feel, one of the things that I really like about it is how it can make you feel more like a child again. By this I mean reality can feel purified and appear slightly more magical. You can be filled with present moment energy and have everything just feel deeper and more special for you. I find that there's just a touch more magic to reality when retaining. And this is very, very similar to, but only really a glimmer of, a higher consciousness state. An experience which is more mystical and more metaphysical. Now, to access these kind of states, one would need to go even beyond retention. Now, you can, of course, include retention. You can continue to practice it, which is what I would recommend, because it will support you with the work. But you'd need to focus even more on the deeper spiritual work, things that are more direct and that actually unravel your mind. Things like meditation, self-inquiry, yoga, using mind-expanding tools, silence, fasting, or contemplation. Now again, retention, it is a spiritual practice, but its deeper strengths lie in raising your energy or boosting your vitality and vigor. It can help you with awakening by making your experience deeper and more spiritual. But in a certain sense, it's more of a springboard to help you become more interested in raising your state in general. Now, once you're invested and you can quite clearly see that retention does raise your consciousness slightly, you can go even further and even deeper by adding more direct methods and practices to take you to that next level and help you really become more conscious that reality is actually a dream. For example, it's one thing for reality to feel like a dream when retaining, as we've said, but it's a whole other thing to actually awaken to how reality is itself actually a dream. And this is sort of funny to me because it feeling like a dream is still actually true to an extent, but it's more of a pointer than it is the full picture. The full picture, or true awakening, involves a genuine shift in your metaphysics. In other words, what reality is for you. So, for example, when awakening, reality would no longer be seen as a physical material world. It would be recontextualized or reframed as a dream happening within consciousness. You awakening would mean that you can see through this dream or see through this illusion, and you'd become aware of how your entire life you have been deep asleep in this dream, identified with your thoughts, personal narrative, and ego. So to now circle back again, remember that what you can take from this with regards to retention is that the subtle shifts in your consciousness that you can have when retaining that make your reality more dreamlike, again, they can be enough to get your foot in the door and to make you more metaphysically curious. This means you're more curious about what reality is, what it's made up of, what's real and what's not real. And this means you're closer to your intuition that there is something more to life, that there is something deeper going on. Somewhere deep down, you know that if you were to really look, you would be able to understand all of this. And again, this would be the path of awakening. Remember that your goal on this path is not just to become more adept at retaining your seed. It's to spiritually grow, flourish, and to become a more calm, self-aware, and spiritually connected person who is more at peace with themselves because they are conscious of the truth of reality. So keep going, keep retaining, and use all of this work to be in service of your gradual awakening. If you enjoyed this video and you would like more, then my friend, please do subscribe.